Welcome to episode number 2, where I'm going to show you how to use Ansible in combination with AWS to help with automation. So let's get started. Now, Ansible has a few requirements. It's written in Python, but getting started is incredibly easy. So we'll just clone the Git repo. And then we need to add a few things to our environment variables. If you're interested in using Ansible more long-term, I would suggest putting these into your bash rc file. Now let's install those dependencies and let's upgrade them just to make sure that we're getting the latest versions. Despite all those errors, that actually did work. So let's run Ansible just to make sure it has installed, and yes, it has. The way you use Ansible is to target a host and then give it some command to do. A while back I wrote the EC2 inventory plugin, which has been part of Ansible core for over a year now. So let's go and set that up. Basically, we just create a EC2 Ansible directory and copy those files from the plugins inventory directory. We'll move that to host since that's the default, and let's go and run that. Okay, we can see that there's no authentication available. So let's go check out that Bodo exception. Bodo has a number of different ways that you configure it. You can use environment variables, but my personal favorite is using a .bodo file. And the structure of it just looks like that. So we need some IAM credentials. So normally I would use my own for this, but for this demo I'm going to create one just for Ansible. And I'm going to give it power user access. You can limit it more if you're interested. And let's go and generate the keys that we need. Okay, now we have the keys. So let's go and create this .bodo file. Alright, let's copy the access key and the secret key. And Control D to stop input. Now let's try that again, and after a short delay we should see the list of EC2 instances that I have running in all regions. Great, so it looks like they're all there, and you can see that they are grouped by regions, by availability zones, by instance types, security groups, and even the key pair that is used. So let's take a look at the EC2 config. If you're not running instances in all regions, you can speed up the execution of this by just limiting it to the regions that you're interested in. So let's just use the 3 US regions for this. And then if you are running Ansible from inside of EC2, not on my laptop like I'm doing in this demo, you probably want to change these to use the private IP addresses and DNS names. When you run this, it creates 2 config files and stores them in the /temp and keeps them for 5 minutes by default. So let's go and take a look at those just so that you know what they are. Looks very similar to what the output is, and then looking up things by index. If your inventory doesn't change that often, you may want to increase that cache. So here we have a few instances that are running. Ansible uses SSH for all of its communications. And to SSH into this particular instance, we will need the answers for AWS key pair. So let's go and add that to our SSH agent, enter in the passphrase, and let's just make sure that we can SSH to that machine directly without specifying the key pair. Yep, that works. So now let's run an Ansible ping as the Ubuntu user on all of our hosts. A ping isn't strictly an ICMP ping, it is an SSH connection that is succeeding. We can see that it failed for one instance but worked for 2. Let's go and take a look at why. Here we can see the instance in US East 1 is actually running Amazon Linux, which uses the EC2-user account to SSH in, not the Ubuntu user. So if we retry this using EC2-user, we should see the complete opposite happen. And in fact, we do. So here is where we want to use our inventory and target specific groups of hosts. We can do that by doing OR concatenations or NOTs or ANDs to just select the instances that we're interested in. So let's go and give that a try. We can see the groups here. So if we wanted to just target the ones in US West 2, we would do something like this. And if we wanted to target the ones in US West 2 and in the security group web, we would do this. That ampersand there would be interpreted by bash. So we need to just put quotes around that so that it's not trying to run something in the background. And there you go, it's just targeted that one instance. So now let's go and do something useful, like installing one of my favorite tools, the AWS command line interface. To do that, we use pip to install it. So let's go and create an Ansible playbook that will go and do that. Playbooks are written in YAML, and once you've written a few of them, it's very quick to do. I'm going to specify all hosts here, even though we know that it doesn't work on all hosts. I'll show you how to limit the machines that you're targeting next. In the task section, it's basically name, module, name, module, name, module. So this first one is apt, and we're installing the pip package on an Ubuntu server. Then we're using the pip module to install Bodo and making sure that we get the latest version. And then again, pip and installing the AWS command line interface. Now running apt and pip as the Ubuntu user would not work. So let's sudo to root to make sure that that does succeed. Now we're going to use Ansible-playbook. So that takes in a playbook, and if we use -L, we can limit what machines we're actually targeting. So in this case, we want to just target those two in US West 2. First thing it does is gather facts that you can then use in other tasks and playbooks further on. And each task it executes in order of how you wrote it in the playbook. Okay, it worked. So let's go and SSH into just one of those instances and make sure that it really did work. AWS help. Yes, it has installed correctly. So now I want to bring up this list and show you one other part is using tags in EC2 is always helpful to help you find instances. So let's go and add a tag to this called episode 2. But we can see that it isn't actually there in the last time that we run this. So we'll need to refresh the cache. And yes, now it is there. So now we can target just that individual instance by tag. Okay, so we've done something useful, but what about provisioning AWS instances? Well, we can provision instances and do a number of other things with the modules. In this example, it's using the EC2 module, so let's go and take a look at what else is available. Okay, under Cloud, there's a number of ones available for EC2, including Elastic IPs, ELBs, tags. So the EC2 one, let's take a look, and you'll see that it has all of the usual things that you would expect, which security group, the instance type, and looking at this example, you'll notice that it's using a local action to go and perform this. So what does that local action mean? Well, let's use the documentation again. Ansible's documentation is really good, so I can't recommend using it enough. Local playbooks are great for running tasks from the machine that you're running Ansible from rather than SSHing to the machine and then running the module. It requires a small little inventory file that we'll create in a bit. So bringing up an instance, we probably want to put it in a security group first, so there's a module for that. Again, it's a local action and you specify the rules like this. It doesn't support VPC egress rules, only ingress. And let's tag the instances once they come up. So there's an example of how to do that. Okay, let's go and create that local inventory file. It's basically just these 2 lines, and you can even get away with 1 if you want. So I'm going to speed up the typing of this. In this case, we're just using the local inventory, local connection. First off, we'll create a security group called EP2 in US West 2 and just allow SSH access. Then we'll use the EC2 module to bring up 2 instances in that EP group, and I'm going to use the Ubuntu's AMI for that. The output of the EC2 module is the instance IDs that we can register in the EC2 variable, and then we can loop through those and add them to the inventory since the inventory is already executed and they won't be there when this is run. Then we'll tag those instances that come up, and now we can use the host group EP2 that we just created to go and target those machines. And now, wouldn't it be great to reuse the code that we've already written to install the AWS CLI? Well, there's a way to do that where you can include tasks. So let's go and convert all of this into a task list. So we'll just create a directory called tasks, copy that into there. Remove the top section and just leave the tasks. Now I'll rename the original one to playbook install AWS CLI. Now I can delete that and include that tasks list. Now if we go back to our provision playbook, we can do the same thing. Just include that task list. Now one more thing is that we're trying to SSH into these instances after they've come up, and machines take a while to boot up, so let's add a little pause in here for 1 minute just to give the instances a chance to boot up and SSH to become available. Alright, let's use Ansible playbook, specifying specifically that local inventory file that we created. And oops, it looks like I made a typo. Yes, I called it modules instead of module. Let's fix that, try again. And I'll speed this up just so that you're not watching a screen. That was a very fast 60 seconds. And since this is the first time you're SSHing into these instances, you'll need to accept the fingerprint. Okay, pip's installed, Bodo's installed, and AWS CLI is installed. And if we go back to the web console and refresh, yes, those 2 instances are there in the EP security group. And that EP security group, if we can find it, has access via SSH as the only rule. So it looks like everything worked just as we wanted it to. Always great for demos. Now this is just the tip of the iceberg. If you're going to be using Ansible for more serious things, you definitely want to take a look at roles and common ways of organizing your templates and tasks. And if you want to have a look at some playbooks that we have written, there's the Netflix OSS Ansible playbooks that'll help you bring up things like Aminator, Asgard, Eureka, and ICE. Well, that's all for this episode. I hope you found it useful.